Right, Professor Varghese, if you could tell us about the current projects of your organization.
Our Center for Policy Research in Higher Education is the think tank which is established. We started functioning only for 1 year. So, in that sense, we are a 1-year-old baby in the real sense of the term. Right. I was working abroad with the United Nations, UNESCO, for the past 16 years or so, and I came back and assumed responsibilities as the director. See, what we have tried to do was that first we developed a perspective for the center and the priority areas for research, and we have identified 5-6 areas for research. These areas were identified in consultation with the Planning Commission, the Ministry of Education, especially Higher Education, and the UGC, which is funding our center. The areas are, one is on equity in higher education, where we focus on diversity and discrimination. Once the system has expanded, you find that a large number of students from first time learners or first generation learners are coming to the universities. They are very different from the traditional elite who used to come to the universities. What happens to the social cohesion? What happens to the social interactions? How the students feel? These are the issues that you are trying to study in one project. The second project is on quality assurance, impact of quality assurance mechanisms in higher education. So, we have established quality assurance bodies like NAAC, national accreditation bodies like NAAC and NDA for the professional education in 1994. And there are institutions, only very few institutions are accredited, but there are institutions which have been accredited twice. So, we are trying to go to some of these institutions and see that. So, at one level we say that institutions are not going for accreditation. At another level we are trying to see that how the accreditation bodies or their accreditation process has any effect, if at all, in the functioning of the universities towards improvement of quality. So, this is an assessment that you are trying to make, but it is not an evaluative study of NAAC or any bodies. And also you find that many of these institutions also have what we call as the internal quality assurance cells. How are these cells functioning? How they contribute to an evaluation process of the teaching learning process that is taking place in the universities. This is a second project.
So, these students that you are the research is based on is the higher education students or the entire education?
No, all our projects are major projects, mega projects, launched in different states, 5-6 states. So, the third project that we have.
Which states, if you could name them?
We have covered all 22-23 states, not all states, 22-23 states under these 5 projects which we have already launched. And then we have a project on governance and management of higher education. Yes, autonomy is a major issue of public institutions. Now, what is also happening is that the system of affiliated colleges, most of the education that is taking place or learning that is taking place or enrollment, in terms of enrollment, large chunk of enrollment is taking place in the affiliated colleges. But if you look at the central funding, only a small share of the funding is going to them. They are mostly funded by the state. Some of them are underfunded, etc. So, what we are trying to do is that how does autonomy or move towards autonomy is affecting these institutions, and there are also governing bodies and governing board structures which are created in how are they functioning. Then there are state councils of higher education which are come into existence. What is their role? I had a meeting first time of the chairpersons and vice chairpersons of the State Higher Education Council. We called a meeting to discuss about the issues related to the RUSA, that is a new program, centrally sponsored program of higher education. So, we had, so that is another project, a third project that we have. The fourth project that we have is on fund flow. How is the fund, central government and state government fund flows, what are the and look at this from below, from the institutional point of view, from the institutions, what are the sources of funding, and when there is a cut in the public funding, how the institutions react. Because the institutions which are affiliated colleges located in the remote rural areas, the people there are poor, So you cannot have capacity to mobilize resources. There are no industries there. So once the public funding is reduced, what are the activities that they stop? What are the activities they continue with, So it's a different type of study, utilization, and the way that different institutions try to react to, respond to adjust it with the cuts in public funding, And we have one more research which is on teaching and learning.
Okay.
How is teaching and learning taking place? In higher education, this area is very, very, very limited in terms of research. Whereas in school education, this is a highly researched area. So we are trying to enter into the field of trying to see that how classrooms and teaching learning processes, teaching learning taking place outside the classrooms, etc. Then we have one more project that is in the stage of development, that is on employment and employability of university graduates,
So are these projects is made in such a way wherein after these projects are completed, it would be in the implementation stage by universities and autonomous bodies?
All these projects are looked at from, since my center is Center for Policy Research, what are the policy implications that we can draw? That is one of the reasons why we are not confining our project to any particular state or 2 or 3 institutions. We have, in all the cases, we have samples from, or we have institutions selected from the southern part of the country, western part of the country, eastern part of the country, although they are not represent, or northern part of the country, in all parts. They are not the, I cannot say that it is not as a representative sample or anything. We try to give that flavor or variations.
Most literate to the least literate.
Yes, so that is. Therefore, we should be in a position to draw some conclusions from this. And after that, what we try to do is that we try to have firstly books and research reports will be published. That is mostly for the researchers. Then what we plan to do, my plan is that the center will bring out what we call as the policy briefs of 4 or 5 pages on different dimensions that need mostly based on our research, but need not have to be confined to our research alone. And we introduce, what we do is that we organize policy dialogues, policy dialogues with the policy makers. So we'll have one for the academic group, since we are a university, since we are a research center, what we are feeding to the researchers. On the other side, we'll have something for the policy makers. That is what we try to do. And we are also bringing out an annual publication called India Higher Education Report. The first report has already gone to Routledge, and it may be out within 5-6 months, So that is not a typical report. We take up an issue and try to get many of the authors, renowned authors, and request them to write on that, and that issue is elaborated and provided. So that is another additional responsibility that we have for the center.
Great. What's your perspective on research-based education in India? Our country is facing a shortage in terms of MPhils and PhDs. So what should be the extent of research-based education, even at the graduation level for that matter?
It all depends upon what we want to achieve. So for example, if the higher education system is expanding as it has been in the past 10 years or so, I think India is in a big trouble, in the sense that we will not have teachers. I am not talking about quality teachers. India will not have teachers, enough teachers. Because while the 12th plan was prepared, when it was being prepared, the expectation was, the estimations at that point of time was that we have around 8 lakh higher education teachers. And if the expansion is taking place, 10 million additional enrollment that was projected in the 12th plan, we may require around 1.6 million teachers. That means an additional of 8 lakhs. There is no way of mobilizing these teachers. The problem is that postgraduate education, or what they internationally call as graduate education, that means master's level, and MPhil and PhD level education is not expanding in India. And it is also finding very difficult for this level to expand, partly because when the employment opportunities are good, and if you are graduating from good universities, you get employment immediately. And the bright minds are not attracted to these type of, you, for MPhil and PhD means you have to put another 4 or 5 years, and mostly they get into research or the public sector institutions or universities for teaching. And if you see the salary differences between a typical university assistant professor and somebody who is getting into the business is substantial. So therefore we have a real problem. It's not only in terms of the numbers, but also in terms of the quality, So there is a need for a concerted effort to give more fellowships, encourage more teachers, those who are already in the system, to do research and create a research culture or a research environment in the universities and in several departments, that is very important.
So last question here, your thoughts on vocational and training, the technical part of education in India, the current scenario, what are the challenges?
Look, if you look at in India, in higher education, one of the major changes which is not clearly, explicitly talked about is the development of non-university sector. We had to make a differentiation between education and training. The universities are essentially meant for education, because the professors and the teaching staff are the people who have escaped from soiling their hands with the practical work. So they are not the right people to teach skills. So that's, I have some difference of opinion when we say that universities should transform and they should produce the skills for the employment market in the business, So I have my own doubts about that. But the other issue is that the development of non-university sector, that is the place where you can have short duration courses, programs, and the teachers can be of experienced people from the business and industries. So that is something that is to be promoted. And you find that if you take in the last 10 years or 15 years, what you find is that there are 8 times increase in the enrollments to the non-university sector. But when I say 8 time increase, the base was very small. So, so the percentages, in terms of percentages or otherwise, it may sound to be very high, but in terms of actual numbers, it is not that, it is only 1 million plus, if I remember correctly. So therefore, one need not have to talk about vocationalizing education or general education. One can talk about this education to be given in the non-university sector. Secondly, if you look at, I was mentioning in my presentation also, if you look at the surveys conducted by, what are the qualities that the employers are looking for? They look for qualities apart from your technical skills that you may acquire or the cognitive skills that you may acquire through education. They also say, for example, now the employers abroad, they look for what is your sports, what type of sports you played. Say for example, if you play tennis, you are not preferred. But on the other hand, if you are playing hockey, if you are playing football, if you are playing volleyball, you are preferred. Why? These are teamwork. Whereas other shuttle badminton or tennis or many other things are individual centered. So what they require is that somebody who can manage, somebody who can interact, somebody who can communicate, So these are the skills that needs to be developed. These basic skills can be developed even in the general education by giving a proper orientation. If employers are looking for that type of skills, certainly. But if you are looking for a job specific skills, my feeling is that job specific skills do not exist in the universities. It does not exist in the educational institutions. It may exist in the training institutions or on the job. So they can be trained on the job. So I am not somebody who is comfortable with this argument of converting higher education institutions, especially the universities, into training institutions. I would like to make a clear distinction between education and training. We should criticize our professors if they are not teaching or not providing the theoretical dimensions very clearly, rather than telling that they do not teach the students the skills, because they themselves do not know the type of the skills which are required in the employment market, And the survey that I was mentioning in my speech also is that 60% of the employers said that they look for, when they look for employees, they look for top 50 universities in the world. Here also in India, when the recruitment is taking place, I am talking about the 200 firms in India, which includes Indian firms and multinationals. But when we look in Indian firms also, they look for people who can communicate well, who can do the teamwork well, you know, irrespective of your, you know, technical or the subject area. You will find many marketing managers or many marketing personnel, they come from English literature background or history background, who are in a position to explain things very well than a production engineer who knows all the details of the production process. Because, you know, somebody, I am going to buy a car, I am not interested to know the technical details like a production, somebody who is in the production sector telling, but somebody who can explain to me that, you know, but that person may not be knowing any technical details, but they are in a position to explain to me and convince me to buy this car, saying that this car has better quality than, or better quality product, it is a better quality product than others, you know. So that makes a lot of difference. Therefore, the capacity to communicate, the capacity to work together, etc., are becoming more important skills, equally or more important skills than the narrow specification of the technical skills, which anyway you have to learn on the job.
That's right. That's why we have multinationals and companies, public limited, are having 2 to 3 months on-job training.
Yes, that is true. That is, even in our public sector, how are our IAS officers developed?
That's right. Training.
You recruit them and then you train them. Okay, so I am saying that the similar pattern. So we have to make a distinction between that education that takes place. Universities can provide good education and produce what I like to call as trainable people, not trained people. And the training can produce trained people, or on the job can provide or improve the skills and make people trained. So one has to make a distinction between trainable people and trained people. So universities may not be the right organizational arrangement to produce trained people for the business world. Because universities are far away, I mean detached from these type of things. Even if universities are linked in the present structure, the present arrangements, it may not be a workable arrangement whereby all the universities will be producing training or become training institutions. You know, it may not be a workable solution, or neither it may not be a desirable solution for the future of the country.